guessing they're going to be a nickel and dime a lot.
Well, let's dive deeper into these injuries with Dr. Scott Adams.
Injury Report is brought to you by Orthopedic Associates of Central Maryland. In pain, contact the experts at Orthopedic Associates of Central Maryland at mdbonedocs.com. Care this good feels good to the bone. Injury Report.
Doc, I want to start with Michael Pierce, who underwent season-ending biceps surgery. They were saying initially it was up to him whether he wanted to play through that or undergo surgery. He opted for the season-ending surgery. If he was to play through that injury, I mean, that would have to really limit him just from a defensive line standpoint.
Sure, it would. Assuming that the injury is where the bicep inserts at the elbow, if it's completely torn, it's going to affect the strength. If it's not completely torn, if it's a high-grade partial tear, it's still going to be painful. And then the question is whether a partial tear then goes on to a full tear. Typically, if you completely tear it where it inserts onto the elbow, that is an injury that you typically fix because it is going to affect your function. And admittedly, it would be harder to fix it later. So it makes you think either it's was a high-grade partial tear or there's always a possibility that it's where it attached closer to the shoulder.
So, Doc, with Ronnie Stanley, to me, it's all mental right now for him to get back on the field.
I think a big part of it is him feeling comfortable getting back. I mean, there should have been more than enough time for the biology to have healed. So if everyone has told him the ankle is healed and solid, it's more an issue of him just getting comfortable on that repaired ankle.
And speaking of ankle injury, it looked like it was going to be really bad with Patrick Mekari. He got carted off, ended up being a sprain, if I'm not mistaken. So is that more short-term? Could he be back in the lineup next week?
That is. Luckily, first, when you think of ankle sprains, you have to divide them into two different classes. There is the high ankle sprain, and that's where it involves the ligaments of the lower leg where the tibia and the fibula connect together. Those are the ones that you worry are going to take a lot longer. Then you have the opposite, which generically you could call a low ankle sprain, and those are the ligaments that connect the ankle to the foot. And by all accounts, he sprained one of those ligaments, and those can be as short as day-to-day, and those can take 4 to 6 weeks. They rarely need anything too aggressive done to them, unlike the high ankle sprain that sometimes ends up needing a procedure or at least a couple months to get better.
You mean like Bill Belichick when he says he's day-to-day with a high ankle sprain?
Right. So when you hear high ankle sprain, day-to-day is rarely the next sentence.
Yeah. Right. It's more week to week.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you about Tua.
Sure.
What did you think, when you saw it on Sunday, and then you saw what happened on Thursday?
Sure, it's tough. The field of sports medicine has made tremendous advances in how we work up concussions, how we evaluate concussions, and clearly the optics on this one is not good.
Right.
There was a time when concussions were the wild west of sports medicine, and it would literally be true or false, I'm holding up some fingers, and if they said true and got it right, then it was you could go out and play. There is so much science now that goes into it, but you have to get it right on the field, and admittedly that's not always easy, but when you watch that replay of him stumbling after getting up, that should absolutely have been a red flag. There's very little else that's going to do that other than something that affected your brain, which is what a concussion is. So if someone had seen that, they absolutely should have said, let's spend a little more time on this.
Doc, real quickly, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Guardian caps that NFL teams were using during OTAs, minicamp, training camp. NFL reported that it reduces impact by 20%, which I think is very significant. Do you expect that to be implemented on game days at some point?
You do wonder. I mean, obviously, concussions are still a major problem, and while we are doing a much better job of working them up and understanding the science of how to get someone back, by far the holy grail is preventing them in the first place. And if there's a way to prevent even a few of the concussions, it's worth doing. And if you can figure out a way to implement those caps in the helmets and kind of take proactive steps, if it decreases the amount of concussions or even just the amount of trauma, even if it doesn't reach the level of a concussion, over the length of someone's career, it's going to pay off tremendously.
Hey, Doc, you know what I thought of real quick? When I was watching the Creed movie, you know, when he got, you know, he was sitting on the bench and he was all beat up and he couldn't see and everything, you know, and the referee come over, how many fingers do I got? And then Sylvester Stallone's tapping him on the back, 2 or 3, you know. That's what that reminded me of.
He's Dr. Scott Adams. Thank you so much. Always great information.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Doc.
Coming up next, climbing the depth chart, Daniel Falele, come on down. You're making your first start in your NFL career opposite a future Hall of Famer in Von Miller. Also, we're going to go behind